We're going to do this Satyanarayan Katha in English, so all of you can understand. Okay? So, Lord Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Janma karmascha madhyam gyayam yoveti svata. One who knows my divine birth and activities will not be born again. Sri Satyanarayan Katha is one such activity of the Lord, by studying which we have every chance of being liberated from human birth or any further birth, or attain salvation. Sri Satyanarayan Katha forms a vital and integral part of this puja. Not listening to the Katha will be a major loss in basically we do not understand many of the values of life that we are meant to understand. Repeatedly hearing this story and meditating on the different aspects will make us more and more interested in the Lord and His activities. As the Lord Himself says further in the Gita, Satattam kirtayanto mam yata hascha dradvataha. The Mahatmas among devotees always speak and sing my glory. Try with determination to realize me. So the Sri Satyanarayan Katha is from the Skanda Purana. So we have 18 Puranas in Hinduism, and one of the Puranas is Skanda Purana, and one of the chapters in it is called the Reva Kanda. So the Satyanarayan Katha is actually described in the Vedas. Okay? Sut Puranaji was the narrator of these stories in Naimisharanya to the rishis led by Shauna Muni, who were performing 1,000-year yogya for the benefit of mankind. Shaunaji and others now ask Sutta Puranaji an important question. When a man has a desire, how can he fulfill that ethically sound desire? By worshipping whom, by what vrata, or by what tapasya? Please let us know. Sutji was pleased to know that this question they asked was for the benefit of mankind and not for their personal benefit, for they had abandoned their homes and all desires. Sutji said this question was also asked by Devarshi Narad to one Lord Narayana himself. So let me tell you that story. Once Naradji was traveling all over the world and finally came to Bhuloka. Bhuloka is the other name for earth. So in Hinduism they believe there are three, so there is hell, which is supposed to be under Patala-loka, which is the underworld. There is Bhuloka, which is the earth, and Swargaloka, which is heaven. Okay? So he came to Bhuloka, when he found everyone was suffering one or the other misery on account of their past karmas and not knowing how to extricate themselves from their untold miseries, which were multiplying every day on account of their ignorance. Being a Sajjana, his heart felt their agony, and immediately he reached Vaikuntha to Lord Narayana to find the right answer for getting the people out of their miseries. But when one sees the Lord, being a great devotee of the Lord, he forgets his purpose and starts praising the Lord. Lord Narayana smiles at him and asks the purpose of this visit, knowing that normally Naradji does not visit him without a purpose. Naradji tells him what he saw and requests a panacea for all such miseries. The Lord, who is now happy at this question of Naradji because of Narad's intention of benefiting the world by seeking the right answer. The Lord said, yes, there is a vrata for the Sri Satyanarayana vrata, which is not known to the inhabitants of Bhuloka. This is a secret, and yet your interest in the benefit of mankind, I shall narrate to you this vrata. This can be performed by anyone, and anyone it does not mean to be an expert or a priest to worship the Lord. Anyone of any caste, creed, community can worship the Lord directly and very easily. One who does this will get all the benefits and pleasures of this world and will eventually get moksha or salvation. Now Naradji wants to know more of the details. He gets very excited, so he wants to know more of the details of the story. So the Lord says this can be done any day, mostly in the evening, or the most auspicious day would be a Purnima or a full moon day, which is why we are doing it today, as it's a full moon day. Okay. So usually you can do it in the evening or on a Purnima day. Gather friends and relatives who have devotion in their heart and perform this vrata with faith and devotion. The prasad for this vrata, known as the sapar, is made by using wheat flour, sugar, and various other ingredients, and that's this tapa, which is an integral part of listening to the story. Okay? Involves milk, ghee, sugar, etc. The night should be spent in bhajans, they say, in praise of the Lord. All those attending puja should be given food and respect. Thus the performer will get all his needs fulfilled. So this is the end of chapter 1. Bhajman Narayana 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 Satyanarayan Narayana Narayana Lakshmi Narayana Narayana Narayana. So the second chapter now starts. The story has 5 chapters, so we finish the first, we go to the second now. Sri Lord Narayana tells Narada a further story. There was once an old and poor Brahmin in the city of Kashi or Varanasi. He was a man of virtue and yet extremely poor and always begging for the next meal. Since the Lord is Viprapriya or Brahmana Priya, he came in the guise of an old Brahmin and accosted him. Tell me, my friend, what ails you? The Brahmin replied, I am an old and very poor man. I shall be very grateful if you can tell me how to get rid of this poverty of mine which does not seem to leave me. The Lord replied, why don't you perform the puja? And he told him how to perform the vrata. The poor man now desires to do this vrata, and thinking over these thoughts of the Lord, he goes to bed. He could not sleep on account of these thoughts. Again in the morning when he woke up, he had the same thoughts, and he said to himself, whatever I earn today by whatever I do, I shall use it to perform the vrata. Since the Lord likes such feelings, or bhavanaabham, he does not want material possessions. He is won by the genuineness of our feelings, he says. And that day he got plenty of money, but thus pleased he took the necessary articles and performed the puja. Very soon, by the Lord's grace, he became rich and had all the things of the world, and therefore started performing the vrata every month and enjoyed all the pleasures of this world, and finally attained moksha as well. Now Shaunaji and other rishis want to know how this vrata spread in the world. Also those who have heard the story and what benefits they've had. Sukji replies, once when this Brahmin was performing the puja, there came to his house a woodcutter. He saw the puja and wanted to know what it is and what are its fruits. The Brahmin said, this is the Satyanarayan puja. Whatever desires you have in your mind will be fulfilled by performing this vrata. My own poverty and troubles have all ended by my very decision to perform this vrata. On hearing this, the woodcutter prostrates to the Lord, takes the prasad and decides to perform this puja the very next day. He thought in his mind, whatever amount I get from the sale of the wood tomorrow, I will use it for the performance of the vrata. That day, he sold the wood for twice the price. Happily thinking of Lord Satyanarayan, he proceeds to do this puja, inviting all his friends and relatives to have devotion in their heart. Thus, performing regularly, he also was an extremely happy man and finally reached Satyaloka. This is the end of chapter 2. Bhajman Narayana 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 Satyanarayan Narayana The third chapter, Sut Puranic Ji continues the story. Once there used to be a good king called Ulkamukha. He was wedded to truth and self-control. Every day he used to go to the temple, worship the Lord, distribute alms to the poor. Once he was performing the vrata on the banks of a river. At that time came a merchant in a ship loaded with precious goods. He approached the king and wanted to know the details of the puja and its fruits. My friend, what we are doing is a vrata called the Satyanarayana puja. This is done with a desire to have progeny, wealth, prosperity, and property. By this, we are worshipping Lord Narayana or Mahavishnu. The merchant said, Please tell me the details of how to perform this vrata, because I would like to have children whom I have not been fortunate to have until now. The king tells him the details of the vrata, and the merchant returns home. He tells the details to his wife, and they decide to perform this vrata if they get a child. Some time later, his wife Leelavati became pregnant and delivered a girl called Kalavati. Leelavati reminded her husband again about the vrata, but he kept postponing it till his daughter grew of age and was ready to be married. The father finds a suitable groom and marries her off, and again forgot to perform the vrata, although he had decided to do so at the time of marriage of his daughter. The Lord now wanted to remind him. The merchant and his son-in-law were in a city called Ratnapura, where the king Chandraketu was ruling. There was a theft at the palace, and the burglars were chased by the police. The running burglars saw these two merchants resting near a tree, and they left the booty with them and ran off. The police saw the two merchants with the stolen goods and were straightway sent to prison. The king himself overlooked to investigate. It is at this time the merchant suddenly realized that this was all on account of him forgetting the promise to the Lord. At about this time, back home, both Leelavati and her daughter Kalavati lost all their belongings due to theft at home and were rendered beggars. During one such wandering, trying to find some food, Kalavati sees the puja being performed at one house. She goes in, hears the story and details, and returns to her mother to tell her what has taken place. Leelavati now knows that it is their forgetting to do the puja that had created all these problems. The next day, she calls all her relatives and friends and performs the puja and begs the Lord for forgiveness. Accordingly, the king had a dream that the merchants were actually innocent and releases them on inquiry and gives them a lot of girls to take home. This is the end of chapter 3. Bhajman Narayana 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 Shriman Narayana 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 Satyanarayan Narayana. Thus Puranic Ji continues the story. Thus relieved from custody, the merchants were returning home. They reached the outskirts of their town in their ship. The Lord, in order to test them again, comes in the form of an old sannyasi or an ascetic and inquires as to what the load in the ship is. The merchant bluffs and says that it contains dried leaves, and the sannyasi says that hastu, or so be it. When the merchant returns to the ship, he finds that it is now containing only dry leaves, and hence it is very light. He swoons, and when he regains his consciousness, realizes that these are the doings of the sannyasi whom he had personally dismissed earlier. He seeks him out and begs for forgiveness. The ever-merciful Lord again forgives him. Now that the merchant was near the town, he sends a messenger in advance to Leelavati to let her know that they are on their way home. Leelavati tells her daughter to complete the puja they were performing and goes ahead to meet her husband. Kalavati does the puja, but in a hurry to meet her husband, she neglects to take the prasad, and when she nears the anchorage, she does not find the ship or her husband. It looks to her that they both had sank. She swoons, and she now decides to die. The merchant thinks this must be an account of some fault of theirs in ignoring the Lord, and then and there decides to do the puja as part of the expiation from his side for the mistake of omission or commission. The Lord, now pleased, makes him realize that it is the daughter's oversight in not accepting the prasad that created this problem, and if she now goes and takes the prasad, everything will actually be alright. Kalavati returned to their altar, took the prasad, and with all faith and reverence, and her husband returned from then onwards, they all performed the puja regularly till the end of their life, and finally after that death they reached Satyaloka. End of chapter 4. Bhajman Narayana 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 Veda Narayana 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 Shriman Narayana Narayana Narayana. Chapter 5. chapter is very important as we also tend to behave like the king in the story in respect of other people's puja, worship or religion. In the words of Naimisharanya, Sut Puranichi continued the story narrating the greatness of Vishvaadhaaram and other rishis. In ancient times, there was a king called Tungadvaja. He was good and he was a righteous king, and like all of us, he ignored the prasad of the Satyanarayan puja and had to suffer very dearly to that. Once the king was returning from hunting wild animals in the forest. He rested under a tree for a while. A few yards away, a small group of cowherd boys had gathered to perform the puja. They did not have anything except their daily bread they were carrying, and a talkative among them became the priest, and they played the game of doing the puja. At the end of the puja, they came and offered the prasad to the king, and out of contempt and pride, he left it untouched. Pretty soon, all his wealth was lost, his 100 children died, and he now knew that being a good king, this was all on his account of his contempt for those children's puja. Without any delay, he goes to that very spot where the cowherd boys had once done the puja, and he gathers them all around him and performs the Satyanarayana puja with all shraddha and bhakti. Okay? Thus the king again got his wealth and the kingdom and his peace. Suta now tells the rishis that this vrata is now especially effective in Kali Yuga, or the present Yuga. The Lord of Lords, called Ishvara or Satyadeva or Satyanarayana by many other names, he alone has many names and forms, and he blesses anybody who listens to this story. One who reads this story and one who hears it will be rid of woes and difficulties. Okay? SriPriya. Today is actually Kartika Purnima, which is supposed to be very special for Lord Shiva. So I'm going to do a few recitations for that.